Ready for some more revolutionary history? The Patriot victory at the Battle of Bennington has been celebrated continuously since 1778. Just in time for Bennington Battle Day weekend, we're getting the scoop on the 249th anniversary party today on Across the Fence. Hello, Vermont. From the looks of my two guests today, you would think nothing has changed in the 249 years since the Green Mountain Boys fought off British raiders headed for the critical Bennington supply depot. But with time comes perspective, and heading into this year's commemoration of the pivotal battle, the focus has shifted. The outcome remains the same. The Bennington victory paved the way for British surrender at Saratoga 2 months later. But the stories being told this year are different, and that invites a new generation to think about living history and the impact of the past on our present and future. I'm joined today by Elijah Dewey, captain of the Bennington Militia, and Ethan Allen, commander of the Green Mountain Boys. Just kidding. In reality, my guests today are Jonah Spivak, communications coordinator for the town of Bennington, Vermont, and the chair of the Regional Bennington 250 Planning Committee. He plays the role of Dewey as a reenactor for educational purposes. And Jim Thatch, vice chair of Bennington 250 and chair of the Village Trustees for Old Bennington, who reenacts the role of Ethan Allen. Jonah and Jim, welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
It is wonderful to have all four of you here with me
Indeed.
today. Well, let's start with history. For anyone who doesn't know, why was the Battle of Bennington so important? And also, I do know, I just want to clarify that it was not just the Green Mountain Boys who were fighting on that day.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to let you tell the story. Tell us about what happened in the Battle
We
of
have like
Bennington.
2 hours to talk about this, right?
We need about 2 hours, but I will give you the short version.
Okay.
So, most people know that the Battle of Saratoga, they called it the turning point of the war because that's when the French decided to join our cause. But 2 months before the Battle of Saratoga was the Battle of Bennington, a battle that Thomas Jefferson called the first link in the chain to the success of the defeat at Saratoga. So briefly, General John Burgoyne and the British Army in the spring of 1777 decided to come down from Canada. He was marching to Albany. He was going to meet General Howe, who was going to march up from New York. They were going to meet at Albany, and they were going to cut off New England from the rest of the colonies.
End the revolution in one stroke.
Yes, the rebellious New England colonies were going to be cut off, and hopefully that would end the war. So, unfortunately for Burgoyne, well, not at that point, but Howe decided not to come. He decided to pursue Washington instead and to capture Philadelphia. Burgoyne, at that point, and all his correspondence bears this, they had no respect for the Continental Army or the militias. He thought he could do it by himself. He was still going to march to Albany. He took Fort Ticonderoga quite easily. The Continental Army he had in retreat. He caught up with them at Hubbardton, almost captured him there, but the Continental Army escaped. But he continued his march to Albany, but he realized that his supply lines were running low. He found out that there was a storehouse in Bennington. Now, the Bennington Battle monument that you showed in the beginning is actually located where the storehouse was. The battle actually took place a few miles west of there.
Technically in New York, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Battle of Hubbardton was the only battle fought on the current state of Vermont.
Although for 2 glorious years, the Bennington battlefield site was in Vermont during the Greater Vermont period, but let's not digress.
Right.
Yes, so Burgoyne sent Colonel Friedrich Baum and a Hessian contingent to take what he believed was the lightly guarded storehouse in Bennington. Well, John Stark and the New Hampshire Militia and Seth Warner with his Warner's Regiment and the Green Mountain Boys were in Manchester, got wind of what was happening, and marched south to intercept Baum before he did get to Bennington. Thus, the Battle of Bennington on August 16th, which had 2 engagements with Stark and Warner, both had reinforcements, and we were victorious.
Yeah.
And the
So a turn back the British and a turning of the tide.
Yes.
Indeed, and really there's 2 key points that emerged from Bennington to set the stage, if you will. And the first was that the Battle of Bennington was a decisive victory for the Patriots.
Right.
And in fact, something like 10% of Burgoyne's force was killed or captured at the Battle of Bennington. More men killed and captured at Bennington than either of the battles of Saratoga, which is an important point. And even more importantly, this galvanized the militia. At this point, they realized that we can do this. We can defeat the British, which up to that point had been this undefeatable juggernaut heading south.
Yeah.
So as a result of the Battle of Bennington, that first link in the chain, as was mentioned, the militia flocked to join Gates at Saratoga by the thousands. And within a month, his army doubled as a result of that.
And so the battle is also so important that this really creates a bit of an identity for the town of Bennington, because like we said, this is, now it's not apparently the longest continuously celebrated. We had this thing, because there's one in South Carolina that has also been, yes.
We did talk about
since
this.
17, but it has been commemorated continuously since 1778. And I'm wondering, how does that give the current town of Bennington its identity?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally woven into the DNA of not just Bennington, but Vermont as a whole.
Yeah.
And as you teased out there, I was fond of saying that this was the only continuously celebrated battle of the Revolutionary War, but no, I was corrected. At the 1999 Congress of Revolutionary Roundtables in Philadelphia, where I learned that the Battle of Cowpens also has been continuously celebrated. But
South Carolina wanted to come to the
indeed,
party.
as they should.
Yep.
But I should note that that battle happened in 1781. Of course, the Battle of Bennington was in 1777. So the Battle of Bennington is still the oldest continuously celebrated
Love
battle.
it. Well, tell us a little bit about what Battle Weekend is like.
Yeah.
So Battle Weekend in Bennington, of course, Battle Weekend, everyone knows, I believe, that it is a state holiday in Vermont. So it is a holiday for the entirety of Vermont to celebrate. But Bennington as a whole, it is every year, and with these anniversary years coming up, is going to be quite the celebration. With 5K runs, we have food truck festivals, we have our great Battle Day Parade that gets bigger and bigger every year. The firehouse has picnics and lunches, and Jonah, you can jump in here and add to what I'm forgetting.
Food, lots of people.
Ceremonies at the battlefield as well as the monuments.
The key is it's a fun weekend.
Yeah.
It's very family friendly, things to do really starting on Thursday night, going right through the weekend, and ending on a little more serious note with a commemoration at the battlefield. And unlike prior commemorations, Vermont and New York work very closely together to share this history. That was not always the case, but that is certainly the case now.
Well, let's actually talk a little bit about history, because this happens in 1777. Of course, you know, all the hype, 1776 gets all of the hype, but Vermont, 1777 is really our big year, right? The Battle of Bennington happens in August, but by then, some pretty significant moments in Vermont history have already transpired. So tell us about that.
You're absolutely right. Of course, this year we're celebrating the 250th, along with the rest of the country, the Declaration of Independence. But as you say, Vermont's signature anniversary year is next year, 2027, because that 1777 year is so significant. And indeed, we start in January of 1777 with the New Hampshire grants finally declaring independence, not just from New York, not just from New Hampshire, not just from England, but from everybody, declaring this new Republic of New Connecticut. yeah. But it doesn't last.
It does not last.
Yeah.
So the Battle of Hubbardton happened on July 8th, and it was the day before. It was
day after. Yeah.
Day after. Ethan Allen's friend, actually, Thomas Young. There was a town in Pennsylvania called New Connecticut, and Thomas Young suggested Vermont as the name.
One of the things I think is also so fabulous is the Vermont in the Constitution that then it does July 8, 1777, is it actually sets out a whole bunch of objectives for itself, like goals for itself that are more progressive than what is eventually going to make it into the U.S. Constitution.
Absolutely.
This is a radical document. 10 years
Radical
before.
document for a radical state.
Indeed. 10 years before the writing of the U.S. Constitution, ours was the first constitution to give universal suffrage if you're white and you're male, and the first constitution to outlaw slavery in adults. So again, this contrast where we have these radical new ideas, revolutionary ideas, but still with the baggage of the past. Indeed, still striving to fully realize those same ideals that are outlined in the Declaration this year, 250 years
Well,
ago.
let's not talk about, because like that living history, right? I mean, here you are representing living history. And in Bennington, I know that you've been doing a lot with education in order to help kind of pull the past into the present and help bring young people who may not feel that history is as relevant in their lives as some of us who grew up really being drummed into history is so important. You know, what's going going on with schools? And we can talk about, you know, middle schoolers, but there's high schoolers and things as well. What's going on in Bennington to help bring kids into living history?
So all schoolers, you're correct that they are the stewards of the history that we are trying to impart and pass along this history. So we start as young as 4th grade, where we've been having 4th grade field trips for every class in Bennington County to come and visit the monument, visit the museum, meet Ethan Allen, meet other Green Mountain boys, do drilling, hear stories. Every classroom now has a curriculum Vermont that teaches Vermont history at least one day a year. And we mentioned the high school as well. You want to talk about the...
Yeah, we've got some photos of, I think, some some students from a graphics class at Bennington High School and how they've been making banners and things for the 1770 or for the 250 celebration.
Absolutely correct. Having, and you see on the screen now, these are some of our southwestern Vermont graphic arts students. This is someone who've done educational logos. They've done this series of banners, 52 banners in our downtown for covering the 3 anniversary years. Designed our brochure for the events. And this has been incredibly impactful because these students who may not have been that aware of the 250th or its significance, this really highlights it for them. And every time they walk the streets or go downtown, it's a constant reminder of their participation.
Something I also know that you're really focusing on this year with Bennington 250 is also bringing in underrepresented stories, which also opens up the door for more people to feel like they have a stake in this history too. Tell us a tiny bit about that.
Yeah, so we've learned a lot by continuing to study the Battle of Bennington, including the representation of blacks fighting at the battle. That started with a gentleman named Sip Ives, a Green Mountain boy who indeed lost his life fighting for our freedom at the Battle of Bennington. And we don't even know if he himself was free. He may well have been an enslaved person serving the militia duty for an owner. So some really wonderful things to suss out. Since then, we've learned that there was at least 11 other black men that fought at the Battle of Bennington that we've documented, and I'm sure there's much more that we can learn as time goes on.
And women as well, because we just celebrated Anne Story, a name that may not be familiar with a lot of people, but an amazing that she was called the mother of the Green Mountain Boys. And she lived with her 5 young children on the Vermont frontier and helped the Green Mountain Boys. And we just did a play down.
All about continuing to open that aperture of history a little bit wider. Well, folks, Bennington Battle Day weekend kicks off this Thursday, August 13th, with the annual
Not
car
this Thursday.
Oh, not sorry. Well, it will be by the time we show this.
There you go.
In downtown Bennington, events move to the monument and battlefield on Saturday and Sunday, and on the 16th, the monument and all state historic sites have free admission, which is very good to know. For more information, check out the Bennington 250 website right there on your screen. Jonas Spivak and Jim Thatch, also Ethan Allen and Elijah Dewey, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
It's our pleasure.
It has been wonderful. And as always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.